have to mute your audio.
We are live.
Okay. Hi guys. Thank you for accepting to come again today. I'm excited to have all of you here. So just a quick introduction. My name is Paul Kwekwa-Grofi, and I'm a global shaper with the Accra Hub. And I'm also part of the Changing Fashion, Future of Fashion team for Ghana. So today's program initially was supposed to be the workshop session where we have Now Beye do a presentation, including her peers, Piero and Isatu. But what we want to do is that before we do that presentation, we'd like to have a recap of the conversation that we're having on Monday. And we're super excited and pleased that Delali has accepted to come back and basically have that chat with us. I'm also looking forward to having Jacqueline come on board as well so that we can have that conversation and basically have a look at what the landscape currently is like in Ghana. So just as a bit of a backdrop to today's conversation, last year we had the same events, Shaping the Future of Fashion, and we uncovered a couple of things. What we looked at last year, the main idea for last year's conversation was just to see what the challenge or what the industry looks like in Ghana and what are the current challenges that we are facing. Because we realize that when you talk about sustainable fashion, depending on what parts of the world you're in, it can mean something totally different. And so, for instance, in areas where there's manufacturing, then you're looking at the kind of ethics that go into place. Are people being paid a living wage? If it's kind of materials that are being used, are those things being done? What kind of ways are the materials made? Are they harmful to the environment? Are they being made in ways that that can last longer and that can have that basically is just not causing harm, right? And then if you're looking at more consumer nations, so in the West, then you're looking at, for instance, are the consumers aware of their habits and how they are treating the clothes that they buy, etc., etc. So for us, we wanted to see in Africa, right, what does sustainable fashion mean for us? It's a growing industry, it's a growing space. We still have a lot that we need to figure out, even in terms of when you talk about fashion industry. So in our bid to grow in this space, how can we do that consciously so that we can avoid some of the pitfalls that these other countries have faced, and we can do it in a way that benefits all of us and all the key stakeholders and all the key players. Yes, all the key stakeholders, can benefit, and yeah, that's about it. So I'd just like to go straight to the point. I'd like to ask Delali, basically for those who are not able to join a conversation, if you're new here, I'd just like Delali to introduce herself and what she does at Woodin as well. And yeah, we'll move on from there.
Okay, so I'm the ready-to-wear product manager at Woodin. So basically, I'm responsible for putting together designs for garments and fashion accessories, the product development, the sourcing and production management, right up until we get the goods to the shops for people to buy. So that's my main responsibility. And Woodin has shops in, I think, 5 African countries. So we have a total of about 16 shops all over Africa, basically. Okay. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Okay, right, that was great. Piero, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Piero. I'm a fashion designer. I'm based in London, and my focus is on biotechnology. I'm looking at ways to implement that into my designs. So creating innovation, but at the same time also creating sustainability, working with living organisms, the idea of having like working with nature so that the material that you are working with, it could be natural material, but could also be like a living material. So what is going to happen? Avoiding avoiding that the final product will end up in a landfill. And even if it does, for example, imagining is a living material. It's a living organism. It could just go back into its natural environment.
Into nature, right.
So that's briefly my focus.
Wow, that sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation and seeing, what you're about. One of the key things I like to find out is how that can be applied over here. I don't know if you needed some fancy technology or fancy equipment to implement.
Yes, I think that also the whole engineering process as well has to go in the same pace of, you're creating a new product and you're probably going to need to create machinery that will help producing the future product, for example. So yeah.
Right, so I'll have now Bay also quickly introduce herself. Hi, Na. Can you hear us? I think your audio is on mute.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
You can hear me. Fine, I was muted. My name is Naobe, but just by the way, Isatu has joined us. So,
okay.
Yeah. My name is Naobe. I am an entrepreneur. I can call myself a cultural entrepreneur for now. And I am very interested in sustainable design and how we can apply them, how the everyday person in our local setup can apply them. So my work has involved a lot of research. That's how I am in touch with people like Piero, Isatu, and even organizations or innovations or enterprises here in Ghana too. Because for me, I'm interested in consolidating all of these all of these individual or collaborative efforts by other people and see how best we can present it to our people so they can also take advantage of them and also grow their local capacity. Yeah, so that is me. Thank you.
Okay, so but what's your background though? Is your background in design though?
I know you're up to something. Okay, so my background is not in design. My background is in parasitology. That is the study of parasites. I've come from a background of medical research, but as a creative person, naturally, and having to try to make my own clothes and do my own art growing up, I didn't follow my skill set academically, but then at this point, I'm able to join the two and make the most out of it for what I do for now.
Right, so from a medical research background into creative, into design, I think that's exciting. Yeah, that's exciting because then you can bring to bear all the different things you learned in that discipline and see how that's how we create new things anyway.
Wow.
Just to jump. So we'll go straight to Delali. Delali, please. We'd like to know from an industry standpoint. We'd like to know what does the sustainable fashion space look like in Ghana, if there even is one. Right. I did a bit of research and I realized that ethical apparel Africa currently lists just 2 companies as sustainable or ethical manufacturing companies here in Ghana. So you have Catalan Fashions, and I think you have, I'll just quickly check the other one as well. You have Catalan Fashions and you have Alfie Designs. And aside that, there isn't any other company listed as sustainable, as ethical in Ghana. Right? The other company that they actually have is a company in Benin, I believe, African New Confection. Companies obviously respond to the needs of the market. If we're aware and the customer is conscious about how their clothes are made, who's making them, and what type of fabrics are being made, etc. That's when they obviously put a demand on and the company responds to it, I believe. Does that mean that if we have just 2 companies in Ghana, does that mean that we're not ready, or we're not even aware of what sustainable fashion is, and we're not asking for it? Or I don't know. What would you say to this?
Okay, I believe that there are more sustainable companies in Ghana. Ethical Apparel probably is not aware of them. The two companies listed I am familiar with, and I know that Ethical Apparel works with them. So I think because they work with them, they are familiar with what they do and can vouch for them. I can tell you what we do in the VLISCO group of companies. So as I said yesterday, I don't think I mentioned it today, but the VLISCO group is a company that is made up of 4 different brands. VLISCO being the first brand, which is actually manufactured in Holland. Then we have GTP and Woodin manufactured in Ghana. And then Woodin as well is manufactured in Cote d'Ivoire, as well as a local Cote d'Ivoire brand called Uniworks. Now,
Uniworks,
yes. So all together, we form the VLISCO group of companies. So these are different brands, all belonging to the same company. So what I'll do is I'll first tell you what we do in our fabric manufacturing in Ghana, the things that we do that make it as sustainable as we can be right now, and what steps we're taking to be more sustainable in the future, and then also what we do on the ready-to-wear front. Okay. So because we produce fabric, and then in Woodin we produce ready-to-wear as well. But first and foremost, the VLISCO group is a fabric production company. So first of all, we use 100% cotton, which obviously is biodegradable. And in order to print on that cotton, the VLISCO group buys cotton from farmers all over Africa, and they buy mainly organic cotton or GM cotton from traceable farms. So we know where our cotton is coming from, and we ensure that they are using best practices to make sure that we are as sustainable as we can be. Then having got the cotton in the weaving process, I don't know if people are aware, but you have to stiffen the fibers, the yarns, before you can actually weave them. Otherwise, it's going to break during the weaving process. So we use a starch to stiffen the fibers while you weave, and it's called sizing. Now we use potato starch to do that, which again is biodegradable. Then, so after the fabric is woven and then it comes to printing, the wet processes, I'd say, first of all, we use enzymes to break down the starch. So not chemicals, we use enzymes that break down the starch naturally before we actually start the printing process. Now, when we are printing, we make sure wherever possible, we use organic dye stuffs. So we limit the use of synthetic dye stuffs, wherever we can. And then also in the finishing processes, after we've printed, we again cut out most of the carcinogenic stuff where we know about it. We work constantly with the standards board. They monitor us all the time to make sure that what we are producing is safe and how we are producing it is safe. So even before we get to that stage, as a company, we have built and operate a water treatment plant so that we do not put raw effluent straight into the environment. We actually treat our water that comes out of our factories, and then we reuse it. So 50% of the water we use in our wet processes actually comes from our water treatment plant, our own water treatment plant. Then in addition to that, to augment that, we use boreholes to supplement that water. So the water we actually use from Ghana Water Company is very little. So majority of the water we use is A, from our water treatment plant, then B, from boreholes. So that's on the water treatment side of things. Now, currently, we are engaged in discussions with a consultancy in the Netherlands. I mean, as you know, VLISCO is based in the Netherlands, so that's who we relate to most of the time. We're liaising with a company in the Netherlands on how to go solar. So we're actually in active talks now. So as soon as possible, we would like to go off the national grid and use solar energy in our production, in our offices and everything. So that is actively, we're working on that actively right now. Then when you come to the workplace, so we're talking about production practices, looking after the health of employees and stuff like that. We again working constantly with Standards Board and the Environmental Protection Authority.
Okay.
So our factories are well ventilated. We use energy saving lamps where possible. We have transparent roofing sheets wherever possible so that we can reduce the use of artificial light. We use PPEs where necessary, depending on where the person is working, for noise reduction, dangerous substances, manual handling of dangerous machinery and stuff like that. So wherever is needed, we use PPEs so that our staff are as protected as possible. And then we constantly have this competition going on where people are supposed to spot hazards and bring it to the notice of the safety department so that we can, take care of that and make sure that we are as safe as possible, looking after everybody's health and well-being. So that's on the fabric production side. Then when, so after the fabric is produced, well, most of it is sold, as fabric, but then a small portion is used to produce ready-to-wear. So for ready-to-wear, we don't actually have any in-house production ourselves. We outsource the ready-to-wear production. So we use, well, so first of all, our ethos is to design, we want to create fashion that is designed by Africans in Africa for Africans. So we try to make everything as local as possible. We use a lot of local suppliers, yourself being one of them, as you know. So we try to use local suppliers. So that is encouraging employment and job creation, locally. We monitor our supplier base to ensure that they are compliant to ethical practices. We use sewing accessories and trims that are locally made wherever possible. We embrace the use of sustainable trims. For instance, going back to you, Paul, when you designed some bags for us last year, and you combined our fabrics with old jute sacks. Again, that is embracing sustainability. We use coconut shell buttons and beads wherever possible. I mean, that's just an example. So wherever possible, when we are presented with or we are available of a sustainable trim or components that we can use, we do use it. Then coming to the styling of our garments and fashion accessories, we try to be very fashionable. we're supposed to be, we use the word fast fashion, but not in the derogatory term that most people are using it now. We say we are a fast fashion company based on the fact that we are producing new designs all the time. So that's what we mean by fast fashion. So in doing that, we try to be very trendy, but at the same time, we try to strike a balance between the really trendy styles and then some classic timeless styles. So that is where the circular fashion comes in. So when you have timeless classical styles, people can use them for longer before it gets recycled, reused, or dumped, as the case may be sometimes. We also, our target audience use our clothes for and accessories for smart casual occasions. So again, that gives us an opportunity to present styles for more user moments. Because when, if it's formal, it's more rigid, but with smart casual, it can transition easily between office wear to, cocktail hour, partying, and so on. So that gives our clothes more usability. And then I mentioned before, we use 100% cotton, so it's biodegradable. And last but not the least, we use our tailoring scraps to make fashion accessories. Some of our suppliers that make us earrings and necklaces and stuff use scraps of fabric from the tailoring floors to create fashion accessories for us. So in a nutshell, those are the things we try to do to try and be as sustainable as possible.
Right. That seems like it's actually quite a lot. It looks like there was an extensive auditing of your operations, and you had to quickly change them. But one of the things I'm thinking, because we're looking at Udin is one of the major, or VLISCO is one of the major players in Ghana, or I believe in Africa as well. But I think there are other players as well. I don't know how extensive this sort of change has caught on with the other industry players. What was the catalyst for change for the VLISCO group? Was it as a result of consumer awareness, or what was the catalyst for change?
We've always wanted to be as sustainable as possible. It's not always been easy. So it's more a case of, as time goes on and we are aware of a more sustainable way of doing something, and then we change and do it. So first of all, for us as a company, we want to be more sustainable, and our customers would also like us to be more sustainable. So it's also good for us to be able to say to our customers that we produce our fabrics and garments in as sustainable a way as possible. I mean, it's a continuous process. I can't say that we are sustainable full stop, so we stop here. But it's a constant process.
Constantly evaluating and evaluating what can be. So how far back was this transition made?
Well, I've been with the company for 7 years, and for as long as I've been with the company, it's always been part of our conversation to look for more sustainable ways to do stuff. Okay,
and what was that? Because I mean, business is there to make profit. Have you had to make certain sacrifices or compromises to profit, or to it's basically as a result of your efforts to practice more sustainably? Have there been impacts? Have there been some compromises that you've had to make, looking forward to a long-term results, or looking for, and so you had to compromise certain things short-term wise in terms of profitability, etc., just so that you can make further impacts down the line. You can recoup those, whatever you've lost.
Thankfully, no, not at the moment. Thankfully, for each sustainable innovation that we've been able to adopt, it has helped cost-wise as well. So it's been a win-win-ish situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's insightful. I mean, it's one of the things you mentioned. I had no idea VLISCO was on top of its game like that, and it's really good to hear, because then that can be sort of like a model that other companies can look at as well in industry, and then copy across and translate across, because often we don't hear of organizations like you and what you're doing. I think that it would be more beneficial to sort of put some of these things out front, because your target market is a lot more aware of what's happening. I believe where it helps us to see, so that other companies can also have a model that they can sort of emulate, and copy, and then it benefits also. Jacqueline, it's good to have you.
Hey, how are you? Apologies for my slight tardiness. Getting confused.
No problem. We're excited you've come back to join us.
Of course.
So just as a follow-up to what Delali spoke about and what the VLISCO group is doing, you've had, aside teaching in some very prestigious universities. Well, you know what? Before I go on, I'd just like you to give a brief introduction for yourself, so that audience have an idea of who is speaking with us.
I'm sure, yes. So the last 10 years, well, let me just start back. I'm a fashion designer by trade. So my background has been working in fashion for nearly 20 years, living in China, Germany, and Turkey, as well as the UK, where I'm from. As a fashion designer for brands and retailers like Puma, like Fila, like C&A, and I've been working designing for them. In the last 10 years, I decided to do a master's in ethical fashion because I really had a desire to see a better way of doing fashion. And so I did that course. It was one of the first courses, if not the first course that was out there, called Ethical Fashion Masters. And that's what kicked off my business, Africa Fashion Guide, because I was focusing on the textile industry in Africa. So it's interesting with Delali talking about the textiles and the sourcing and everything, because that's really my area of focus. In the beginning, I looked at from the cotton industry, I looked at cotton throughout Africa in general, and the umbrella companies are where they were based, most of them in Europe, in Holland, in Germany, in Switzerland, in France, Belgium, all over. They were the umbrella companies that were part of the who organized the cotton industries around the world, especially in Africa. So it's very interesting to hear about, you know, your perspective for that, because without the cotton, there is none of these beautiful textiles that we see. So I started to explore that industry and shared it through blogging, shared those stories that weren't being told about the full supply chain, African fashion and textile industry. And I now do business coaching. I have online courses. I do conferences annually. I take people to the manufacturers. So we do go and visit GTP as well, and other makers and producers, and the manufacturing houses that you spoke of before, like Cadman, and there's many, small, large and small. We go and visit those as well. So I literally support creative entrepreneurs who want to start fashion business in Africa and help them with the steps and the tools to make that happen.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that is fantastic and very very inspiring. Looking at all that you've been able to do and achieve. So just to jump off where the Lali ended, basically just looking at the landscape, you've had extensive experience across Africa, and see, like you're saying, and to see what other industries, other companies are doing. Do all of them have the level of change, or the level of the level of change across their production pipeline, like, you know, like VLISCO have? And what are some of the challenges you've seen them struggle with? Are they even I'm sorry, what?
I said, how long do we have? He's asking me.
How long do we have?
Yeah, we need a lot of time to go through.
Okay.
I think VLISCO have an authority on the continent when it comes to textiles, and it comes to manufacturing, which allows them to be able to do what they do, because they have a market of buyers and a huge market of interest. Now, if we're looking, it depends, we're looking at the cotton industry, if we're looking at textiles, like you see, I'm wearing cotton textiles, which is from Mali, with the indigo dye. And the challenges that I've been seeing, I mean, if we talk about right now, even today, I was messaged from one of the supplier partners I work with in Kenya, and talking about their challenges and needing support to keep them alive, basically, during this season. So,
during the season, right?
Exactly. So the challenges are demand. You can't even supply, it's demand. The challenges are keeping people in jobs. The challenges of the supply chain. We're not even thinking about this COVID situation right now. Just talking about the manufacturing industry and the textiles is very complex. I'm hoping that the free trade agreement area is going to support the transfer of transport and transfer of materials, trims, and, you know, textiles to the actual different African countries, so they can trade easier. It doesn't have to come out of the continent in its raw form to come back as finished material. But this is a major issue. That's where the value is being lost. And that's why I'm saying a company like VLISCO, because as Delali is saying, they have the opportunity to source the cotton, the raw material locally, to be able to transfer that with the ginneries and mills and all of that, with effluent plants and all of this, to put all these things in place, to have a vertical supply chain that would allow them to then be able to export or to sell locally, where not everybody has that opportunity. So they're really stuck with.
Hi, unfortunately, we didn't hear the last bit that you said. It seems just your mic went on mute.
Oh yes, it did. Okay, I'm back. You can hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
So yeah, not everybody. I mean, VLISCO has the setup that allows it to have the support of the full supply chain in place, from the cotton through to the manufacturing of the materials. But a lot of industries in Africa, a lot of fashion manufacturers, if we're focusing on that side of the business, struggle because they are more CMT units. They are more cut, make and trim. There's a few of those, you know, in Ghana. You know, like the Ose Duros who do that as well for their own brand.
Right.
You know, I work with other manufacturers as well, that they just do cut, make and trim, but they don't have the access to the raw materials to allow them to have a full supply chain. And that's where they have to import, which raises the cost of their production and their opportunity to be able to export at, and to be able to be challenged in the market better. They're more challenged because they cannot reach the same prices because of that.
Okay. So basically, from what I gather, depending on the size of the organization, there are different challenges that they are facing, and there are different things that they are tackling. So, for instance, Osajo that you mentioned, I know they're more into the kind of dyes that they use for their fabrics, and then also in terms of the payments of their workers, treating them well. Those are the main areas they are tackling in their business. So there are a couple of questions coming in, and we're trying to collate them as they come in. I think people are really interested in what Delali had to say about the VLISCO group and all that they're doing as well, and what you also said, Jacqueline. So Diana's putting them together. I will read them when I have all of them. But quickly, I'd like to go to Na. Na, are you with us? Yes. So we'd like to hear from you what you have seen just being on the ground, right? So working with creatives or working with startup companies who want to do fashion. Is there an understanding of what sustainable fashion is? And even from your perspective, how would you describe what sustainability means? Because I mean, from discussion that we're hearing, it depending on what the organization is, also being on the size of the organization, it kind of means something. For VLISCO, they have the full setup, and so right from sourcing of the materials right from sourcing of the fibers to making the material to the production setup, they put in steps in place to make sure that all of that is ethical and all of that is sustainable, and they're measuring all of these things as well. For you, with up and coming creatives, do they have an understanding of what sustainability is? Are they thinking about it? What have you seen?
Well, I have dealt with a lot of people in the informal sector, people who do not, of course, as you rightly said, as you've rightly acknowledged, they don't have the capacity of VLISCO. So
yes.
The understanding of the general populace, when you talk about sustainability, is, should I say, recycling. And
yes.
So the other aspects of it are not really, they don't have a grasp of the other aspects of it. Because when you are talking about circular design, recycling is like in the outmost part of it. It is like the last resort. So definitely, yes, a lot more education has to go in. We started the Circular Design Lab in January this year, and we had a few people. We had people from industries, but most people who felt, okay, so I'm using plastic to do this, so I'm practicing circular design. But when we talk about circular design, of course, we are talking about canceling out the waste. Okay, so that is one part which I don't know whether to say it's debatable. The correct word will come eventually, because when listening to Delali, you realize she was talking about their trimmings being used for earrings and things. Okay, so at the end of the day, when we are in circular design, we are going to say, okay, so beyond that, what happens to that? What happens when maybe a part of my earring is broken, or maybe the fabric is fading? What happens to that? So they have taken it this far, but then at the end of the life of that particular item, okay, what do we do to keep it in the loop? So that the really needs, because that requires a lot of collaboration, because you need experts or technocrats from other other sectors, if I should put it like that, people who understand the materials, for instance. And of course, we are all supposed to understand very much the materials we are working with. You can see she clearly understands the material we are working with, the fact that it is 100%
organic cotton, yeah.
Yes, but I think the conversation would have to migrate to another level. Okay, so how can we make our materials to last longer than they do? Or what happens when, because cotton fabrics also at some point, they also become weak or frail. What happens to them after that? We just allow them to go into the landfills to decay, or there's something else we could use them for? That is where the conversation has to go now. But for the small scale designers, I won't restrict it to fashion design, because I look at people who are designing, and I think that even when we have people who make the bead makers, they are making their beads from bottles. Okay, so they are also into fashion, for instance. So theirs is also a recycling pool. But one good thing also about glass is the fact that you can redesign with heat. I mean, it's a lot of work, but then you can still reuse them or keep them in the loop for other items. So the conversation, definitely people are willing, people want to be seen, or maybe people want to be part of the sustainability revolution. We just have to put out more information about how it's done, or how they can take advantage of it, or how they can profit from it.
Right. And just to add to that, yesterday, before our session was hijacked, 2 days ago, Delali mentioned something, and it stuck in my mind, because this is something that we've also discussed at fashion school, which was, so for instance, the standard allowance when you're sewing a garment is 5/8.
Yes.
Right. So it's been hammered into our heads, and we understand it, and it's gospel. But no, Delali mentioned how, for instance, back in the day, we'd give our garments a little more room. We give a little more allowance, just so if you got a little bigger, you gained a little bit of weight. You could unpick it yourself. You could unpick it. You could unpick it yourself. And it was done a lot with our school uniforms. I mean, growing up as a child, I think I had a couple of baggy shorts and shirts that I knew would last for quite a while. And so, that brings my mind to the fact that there are probably a lot of things that we were doing that fit into the frame of sustainability, that we probably didn't know, or we discarded, or we thought it was just, then again, it came out of necessity, right? It came out of a need, because then we didn't have all the resources that the rich world has to create and dispose of. We knew that if we had something, we had to make it last, right? Naturally, we had to make it last. And that's even pushed, for instance, the secondhand, garment industry in Ghana, and, people looking for cheaper ways of getting certain clothes, etc. The general question I want to ask, if anybody has an input on this, probably Jacqueline, because you've taught a lot, is, are there current practices that we are probably overlooking, or have there been past practices, across Africa and Ghana? So obviously, there are examples like the mud cloth, etc. in Mali, and those things were done in the past. But are there current things that we're doing that we probably need to uncover and probably put more highlights on it and say, look, this is what you guys are doing is sustainable. It's not archaic. It's actually a good practice. We need to figure out how to enhance it. Because sometimes some of these conversations, when it comes up, it's kind of made to seem as if it's something new that's been brought over to us, you know, and, you know, we're now discovering what sustainability is, right? And sometimes we've been doing these things for quite a long time, and we probably discarded them because we thought they were not cool, or they were not professional enough, or they were not up to world standard. So other things that we've been doing, other things that we're currently doing that we probably need to go back to and look at and say, this is something we probably need to refine a bit more, and it will serve our purpose as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So I guess I come from the unfortunate side of being, and I say unfortunate because being born in the UK, some may see that as fortunate, but I think it's unfortunate. Being born in the UK and seeing things as this is the right way of doing things, and then being in the fashion industry, working around an industry that directs how people should be, how people should do when it comes to fashion and production and dressing and so forth, and kind of setting the standards. So being introduced to African communities, even when I talk to my own mother who's from the Caribbean, and just listening to some of the things that were done, they're just better. There are better ways of doing things, and even the things like we talked about Osedu earlier, and later on I'm doing a talk with Mariama Fashion Production, who also do batik and textile dyeing and so forth, and the Ethical Fashion Initiative, who have a production house, if you want to call it like that, where they are doing eco dyeing, natural dyeing in Burkina Faso. And it's just ways of doing things, but using what you have around you, rather than producing using chemicals. We know why chemicals are used. We know we want to create brighter colors or so forth, and we all love bright colors. But there are ways that things can be done, like these businesses I just mentioned are doing with natural dyes. That's a strong way of doing things. It's just with the natural dyes. It's just a way that has been done for centuries. That's why you have like the bark cloth, you have bogolan, you have all of these, the indigo. That's natural. It's just the way that you're processing it. But there's ways of doing it without harsh chemicals. So African countries, if I put Africa in one box for the moment, please excuse me, but African countries have been doing things like that for a long time. And then it's interesting, even now, during this climate, there's a rise in craft. There's a rise in people want to do things by hand. And I remember when I started my business, there was this discussion that happened in Rome, which was done by the International Herald Tribune, is that what they're called? Through the New York Times, I believe. And it was a conference where they brought the designers together, and it was talking about craft as luxury. And this was like about 10 years ago. And now we're seeing that even more a push and a revival in craft, and craft being seen as a luxury thing. And there's just been something that's been done in African countries and even Asian countries for a long time. Slow fashion. I know Delilah was talking about fast fashion term, but slow fashion is a norm. And I think that's what people are looking at now. Like, maybe we should be looking at what those countries are doing things slowly, doing things by hand, doing things craft-wise, doing things naturally. So that's my contribution.
Okay, thank you. So is Diana here? We'll take some questions. Diana has a couple of questions. People have put some questions, I think, on the YouTube page and on the chat group over here. Diana, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. Yes. So we have questions from some participants here on Zoom.
Okay.
And then we have questions also from participants on YouTube. We'll go with questions from YouTube first.
Okay.
So there's a question for Delali. It says, hi Delali, I'm sure cost is one of the key obstacles to more uptake of sustainable fashion. Are there any incentives put in place by VLISCO to help people make the switch? Then there's another question for Delali. It says, do your current users of your fabric cutouts collect all the fabric, or do they also have a challenge with dealing with them or with managing them. And I believe this is for all the panelists. It says, are there collaborations with other top fashion brands in Ghana and Africa at large to ensure that sustainability measures are channeled across board? Those are questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I understand the first two questions. Let me try and clarify. I think the first question now with VLISCO, we wanted to find out if, I don't know if they're saying that the cost of your items are high because of all the measures you put into place to make them. And so the cost of the ready-to-wear goods are high. And so then are you looking at ways of being sustainable, but yet, because I mean, honestly, up until today, we didn't know VLISCO was a sustainable brand. We didn't know you had all of these factors in place. And so then has that affected the cost of production for your clothes as well? And then other things you're looking at to probably help to reduce the cost. The second question, I believe, was about the suppliers that you work with. So for instance, you're sending materials over to them. Are you helping? Is there a way that you're monitoring the offcuts? And so the excess fabrics that come up as a result, are they being dumped or are they being recycled or reused in a certain way? I think those are the two main things. The third question, I think was pretty clear because it was something I was thinking about when Jacqueline was talking about the different size of companies that are practicing sustainability in their own shape and form. And since all of them don't have the same capacity as VLISCO, are they thinking about collaborating cross-board so that, let's say, if there's a company that's sourcing organic cotton or sourcing certain textures or fibers from farmers, then they know that, okay, look, our cotton is coming from this particular company and they are sourcing sustainably, and it goes to this company that makes the fabric, and they put in these measures in place and make it sustainable before it comes to us, and we die, so that there's that collaboration, and then they can look at their whole value chain and say, we're sustainable. So that's the third one. So please, Delali, can you address the first two?
Okay. Well, the VLISCO group, like I mentioned, there are four brands that make up the VLISCO group. And they are all targeting different sections of society, different pockets, shall we say. The VLISCO brand is the most expensive brand. So that's, like your top end brand. So when I say targeting different pockets, I mean, something like the VLISCO brand, it's not something that people intend to buy to wear every day. It's seen as a store of value. People buy VLISCO and hand it down from generations to generations. So it's got that niche position in people's minds. And yes, all that comes from the fact of the production cost and everything. But at the same time, it is a niche product. But then when you come down to GTP, Woodin, and Uniwax, they are more affordable. They are more your everyday brands. So I'm not sure that the cost issue comes up there. Then when it comes to the ready-to-wear aspect of things, well, yeah, we've bought the fabrics, we've added value to it. We've created the fabrics, added value to it to make garments. And like I said, we try to have a balance between really trendy styles and more classic styles that you can wear for long. So, it's horses for courses, I'd say. So depending on what you're looking for. So yes, production costs will definitely have an impact on sales prices. It's not just in VLISCO, it's everywhere. I hope that answers that question. Then the second question about monitoring, managing fabrics we give to suppliers. Yes, we do. When we ask a supplier to make a particular style, we know how much fabric will go into making 1 unit of that style. And so if we've asked for 200 pieces, for instance, we know how much fabric to give to the supplier to make those 200 pieces. So yes, we monitor it. But yes, there will definitely be bits and pieces of cuts left over from the supplier. So, and that is where, like I'm saying, we end up using those sort of bits and pieces for fashion accessories, you know, where possible. So again, I hope that answers that question. Was my understanding of the questions right?
Yes, I think that answers it. I can bear witness to that because that's been the relationship I've had with you, with VLISCO when I'm producing things, you know, with the measurements that we give, etc. So the fabric is given to us according to what we've stated, and it's measured, monitored as well. So quickly, seems time is fast spent. We'd like to move to the next session. There's still a couple more questions that we have. So if you're paying attention, we're gathering all the questions together. One of our panelists has to go for another webinar. And so we want to move into a session. And then after we have that session, we will then be able to answer the other questions that we have on board. So I don't know if Delali and Jacqueline would stay around for the next session, or they have to leave as well. Would you be available to go through?
Yes, I'd like to. How long will it be?
Yeah, so about 45 minutes. So this is about 45 minutes, roughly. We're looking at. This is last session. It's basically we're looking at.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting the feedback loop. So,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, so this last workshop session where she be taking us through what a circular design model can look like for a fashion brand. And we've got some examples. We're excited to have Piero here, and we have Isatu here to share with us what she's been doing as well. So we'd like move on now. Yes, we can hear you.
No, I mean Isatu. Are you there?
Isatu, right.
Yeah, I can't seem to find her. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Isatu, are you here with us?
Okay, I think we lost her. Let me send a quick message and see.
Okay, as you mentioned, I think she was struggling with the internet connection, right?
Well, I saw her earlier. Just a second, everybody.
Okay, once we wait for Isatu to come online.
Well, she is not. She's not starting. I'm starting, but please be on the lookout when she comes on, so you can prompt me and I'll let her come on.
Sure.
So, hello everybody again. I put together this presentation, just 4 slides, but I hope I gave myself 10 minutes, but the slides are very packed, so I don't know. Can we all see the slides? I can see.
I think your slides will be coming up soon.
No, yes, this is mine. Thank you.
Yes.
So I gave this topic closing the loop, because when we are talking about circular design, we moving from the linear to the circular, it means that there should be a merging somewhere. Please don't move the screen. Please don't move the screen. Let's go back to the title. Yes, thank you very much. So this particular picture I have used has a lot of meaning to this topic to me, because you can see those are kids weaving kente, and kente weaving has been passed on from generation to generation. I am realizing that given our current circumstances with probably our cotton industry, the trend or the way they operate might be changing. Okay, and now they are using threads or yarn they get from China, as opposed to probably what was the situation a few years ago. But you can see those kids over there. At that age, there's a kid in the corner who is being introduced to this kente weaving. He also weaves anyway. Okay, so it is something which is which has bound us, if I should use that term, which has bound us for generations, and something which has our identity. And when we are talking about circular design or the circular economy, this is one of the examples that proves that this has been a part of us for a very long time. This is something from the growing of the cotton to the production of the yarn to the making of the fabric, the kente fabric itself. It has been a part of us. It has inculcated local content, and it has looked at those principles of circular design. And when we talk about the principle, okay, now we can go to the next slide, please. When we talk about the principles of circular design, or we try to define circular design, it has to go with these three principles. They have to generate natural systems. The design has to cancel out wastes or pollution, or maybe reduce them to the most minimal level, the least levels, and also to keep the products and materials in use. That's how Kama was making that point about, okay, so when we use the off-pad to make new items, beyond that, what is it? And circular design is something that has to be deliberate. Okay, it really has to be thought through. It is about constructing a narrative about, should I say, a product. So if you are making a dress or a bag, what is the story you are telling, or what is that story that the item is telling? Is it something which is to last for life? Is it something which is to be used just once? Because that is our problem when it comes to the linear model of everything. Because from one way, let's say you buy a refrigerator, for instance, at the end of it, you can't use it anymore and it's sitting somewhere. It's the same in the fashion sense. And the fashion industry seems to have promoted the idea of, what is the word, using, like acquiring in huge numbers. So we need to go by these, and if we want to do circular design, these are the principles we have to go by. And could we go to the next slide? Something. So I am looking at how we can get to a fashion industry. Usually when we talk about fashion industry, we are looking at, or people are looking at that glamorous aspect, that glamorous space where everything looks so flashy, everything is finished, it doesn't look like hard work. But then these are just a few aspects of the supply chain or the value chain in fashion, which I thought I should just bring together. I haven't even included agriculture. I haven't even included that. There are a number of things which are not included here. But when we look at all of these things, we look at the haberdashery, for instance, okay? The buttons that are made, what are the materials that go into them? How are they made? What equipment do we need to make them? When it comes to merchandising, when it comes to the machinery, the tools, you know, because the fabric has to be grown. You have to grow cotton or maybe get silk. How are these things done? Because if you are going to make, if you are going to create an item that is, that will last or stay in the loop for a very long time, and the item has to be devoid of pollution, and the item has to be enable a regenerative system. Okay, we need to understand the materials we are working with. And in Ghana, I know that whenever I have issues with a machine, my sewing machine, for instance, it is such a headache. But then the machinery forms parts of the fashion industry. Those are parts where we do not look at, or we don't necessarily consider when somebody says, I want to be a fashion designer. Usually when you hear someone say, I want to be a fashion designer, the person wants to sew or to design clothes. But all of these things go into ensuring a sustainable or a circular model. So if you pick just a camera alone, for instance, okay, and you need photography is a very, very important aspect of the fashion industry. Okay, so if we pick like just one camera, or maybe you are done with designing your clothes and you want to make a catalog, and you there's a problem with the camera, what happens? Making your sketches, it goes with something, paper, you need pencil. What are the processes that go into all of these things? So when we are talking about making a circular approach, it means that dealing with the artists, dealing with the engineers, dealing with the scientists, and Pierre is here, so I can comfortably also say dealing with the biotechnologists. Even with the cotton material, like these ones we have here, they have the 100% cotton. Can we go to another level so we can use them for maybe stretch pants, for instance? That is just something I'm thinking about now. And during this COVID time also, there has been, or there was, right now, as the restrictions, some of the restrictions on movement have been lifted, probably we can get access to elastic. We searched and searched and searched so much, we couldn't find elastic. The one important factor when it comes to circular design is also the local content. Okay, so we looking at all of these aspects that go into just making one cloth, one dress, or one apparel. You look at your thread and scissors and your model and your fabric, and even the fabric, there are different types and all manner of things. Okay, how do they also get their material? So it's a matter of collaboration. It's a matter of material intelligence. So, and it's a matter of also understanding your, should I say, your market, because how we have been also considering people, or the people who buy our stuff as consumers, but it is also a matter of considering them as users. So from the design table to the final product, the user is a part of the designs. The user is included in the design, and beyond that final product, what happens to it? So there are a few examples. That's how come I have Piero on, and I hope Isatu has come back. Please, someone should give me a wave if she's come back. I can't find that. I can't find that now. Can we move to the next slide? So I'm going to use one example from one of our colleagues for the circular design lab I participated in, the African cohort. His name is Matthew Edward. This is a football boot Matthew designed, and he designed it after doing extensive research. He is a footballer himself, or he used to play football, and his concern was the fact that the moment you have the least problem with your boot, it cannot be fixed. You might try to patch it, but it doesn't last long and you have to discard it. So he came up with this idea. He interviewed a number of people, his colleagues, the people like other footballers, and he went and I think he made sketches of the boot and tried to look at, he interviewed them to find out which parts of the boot they thought were more problematic or maybe easily broke. And I think at the end of it all, they came up with the spikes. So this boot Matthew designed, he designed it as, I think the spikes, when they come off, they can just be replaced. So they don't break. You can just screw them back in, like, or maybe get another spike somewhere and screw it back in. And that enables longevity of the product. It doesn't just, you don't just break one spike and just leave it and just discard it because you can't use it anymore. So for me, I have, oh, sorry, I'm trying to slide again. Please move to the next slide. So for me, now, these are the key elements I think we should be looking at when we are talking about migrating to the circular model, we are looking at encouraging research. And when I talk about encouraging research, I don't really mean having to sit in the laboratory with these fancy equipment and need to have a PhD and stuff like that. It is about understanding the basic material, for instance, you are working with. That is what I'm terming here as material intelligence. What are you working with? Is it plastic? Is it cotton? What kind of fiber is it? One ingenuity I was very, very excited about is the pineapple leather, which I keep talking about. The fact that people found alternatives to leather by exploring the fibers of the pineapple, how do you call it, the suckers, okay? And that is one industry, because you're like, there's this movement also about the vegan movement, where people do not want to use animal products and stuff, but that is actually not my point. My focus is the fact that when farmers, use Ghana as an example, when the farmers harvest their pineapples, what happens to the rest, the leftovers? Well, they can be used for manure, but at the end of the day, they also have, meaning they could have excess manure at the end of one harvest season. So what can we use those for? And that is circular design. And the examples, some other examples, popular ones on Instagram, is the fact that we have some students from a girls' school, Mampong girls, making paper out of plantain stems. And Global Mamas is also making paper out of water hyacinth. And they are even using the water hyacinth stock in part of their weaving. So they are making table mats, and like how they weave kente, they are incorporating those into it. So when you understand the material you're working with, if we encourage that research and training and education, we will understand better what we are working with. If it is scissors you are making, once we bought a pair of scissors, which just broke the moment we try to cut something very simple. Okay, but to develop that local industry, and to say developing a local industry does not mean that we are boycotting international products. But to be able to sustain the circularity, the circular model, we will have to incorporate or develop the people around us, develop the resources around us. And that is one important aspect in migrating towards the circular model. So if we do understand the materials we work with, and the research encourages our innovation, our ingenuity, we can make smart material choices, the kind of choices that will enable the products we make to last longer in the market, or to last longer in the loop, and even to migrate from that end phase, well, that natural end phase created for it, onto something else. So I think another key element is also the local content. Well, I mentioned the local content, so we need to invest in our local talent. It is not easy to train some of our local people, some of our, what should I say, our informal seamstresses, or people who are used to cutting things a certain way, because probably their training did not demand them to pay attention to certain detail, or maybe they find certain things too much for them, probably because they also do not have that understanding or that faith in their own self. So we need to be able to invest in the local talents. And I think I mentioned the user-centered research earlier, yes. So this user-centered research, so now is your buyer, somebody who's going to buy your shoe, the shoe you are making. What does Na need? What kind of shoe will she be comfortable with? And what is her, how is her daily life? Like, what are the activities in her life? What does she need the shoe for? And how long do you think it will last, looking at how she uses her shoes? Okay, so the user has to be an important aspect of this, and to have the product designed to fit that user's needs and probably choices. Yes, and then the last one is the collaboration, like collaboration across sectors. Because when we go back to the slide about the value chain, you see there are many aspects to before just one dress is made. So how do we work? How do we cooperate with these people? Because if we have to wait and have some big company come and make tons and tons of, let's say, thread, and we realize that this thread doesn't give us this kind of effect, or doesn't last long, or maybe when you make the dress and even the dress lasts for 10 years, the thread breaks off. Okay, how do we send that feedback in the loop to these people who make these threads, so that we can have the clothes last longer, for instance? So looking at these, the principles as I listed earlier, and these key elements, I thought it would be good to have some examples come on board. And if Isasu is not here, we have Piero.
Yeah, so before we get to Piero, I just want to quickly chip in something, one or two observations I made. So, so you talked about creating a loop, like a feedback loop system, and I know that's what some brands have done. So quickly, so for instance, for the VLISCO group, right, for Udine, for instance, or for some of the other brands that you have, is there some sort of a relationship with the customer that's established, so that after the product has been used for a while, if something happens, it can come back, they can basically come back to the brand for the brand to, I don't know, do something about it. So it's not like a one-off sale event and you're done and it's dusted and we're over with you. But in some shape or form, there's some sort of loop, cycle that's created. I'm just based on what you said, on what Na spoke about.
Not at the moment. I mean, it's good to know, it's good food for thought. So it's something we can think about, but no, we don't have anything at the moment in place like that.
Is that even something that's feasible in our setting? Because I know that, I mean, in certain places, it's a little more easier to implement things like that, right? And so, for instance, a person has a jacket or something, it's more steadier, it's probably jeans, and so then it can go back to the company and the company can pull it apart, or give you a discount on a new pair of jeans jacket, or a new pair of is that something that can be done over here? I mean, just off the top of it, with the experience that you have, I see Jacqueline nodding her head. Is that feasible in our setting?
So I think maybe we need to liaise with Jacqueline to give us some ideas about how to go about something like that.
Okay, so that's like designed for reassembly. That's what you're really talking about. And that goes back to what Delali was speaking about, that families would do, probably mostly women would do, I guess, to create a clothes. So it's designing it in a way they can be reassembled later. So you're not cutting it, you're stitching it, and it can be reused later. So that's a clever way, and an African way or a Ghanaian way of doing things from way beyond. Now, working, like I said, I worked at Puma back in the day, and I actually worked with them during the time that they were going through a big sustainability push, the cradle to cradle method, which was how kind of circular fashion, I've got the name of the author, Michael something, I can't pronounce his surname, but the cradle to cradle method that the circular fashion derived from, and that was what it was all about. It was all about designing in a way that wouldn't go back into the soil, but now we're looking at ways of reusing. I think the fashion industry, the one thing I'm seeing a lot these days is the sharing economy, and we're seeing that in the ways of Uber and Airbnb, and that method of the business model of the sharing economy. And I think it's more of a mindset, if people, especially in African countries, I know there's a large secondhand clothing industry, but if people would share their clothes in that way, or if it's done in the sense of renting. Speaking to brands about renting clothing. So if you are a VLISCO brand, maybe they have the authority to be able to say, here's a collection, these outfits, because they're made high end, you can rent them for events. But I don't know if the sharing economy of me and somebody else, two African women would do that, or two African men would share their clothes between themselves. Maybe that's more of a European or first world thing, I don't know, but the rental maybe is an opportunity and a way of people can still tap into what is a brand like VLISCO, or say Chrissy Brown, or one of these top brands. Maybe that's an idea.
You know, and just jump in. This time is fast spent, and so I'd like Pierre to move on. But before we move on to Pierre, I just want to add to what you said. You know, I've also seen the shared economy, and I've thought about it, and I was really wondering whether realistically we could have something like that over here. But just as you were talking and referencing a brand such as VLISCO and Christy Brown's and the high-end brands, it just occurred to me that they could actually have a second-hand model of their own. Because, so for instance, for the higher end, you know, for the high-end brand like VLISCO, for instance, you know, I mean, I've noticed that I didn't really know because I'm a guy, but I noticed that, for instance, some women would only want to wear garments once or twice, especially if it's been taken photograph, if there's been a photo of it out there, and it's on Instagram, it's on social media. She doesn't want to see it again, right? And so, could there be a return model where, for instance, she brings back that garment, and you know that goes into a second-hand collection that's actively advertised as, you know, this is our, so for instance, you know how Apple has a refurbishment system?
Yes.
Where they have, you know, Apple refurbished products, and they certify that these products are good to go, they're almost as good as new, but they're second-hand products. And so, for instance, that's something, you know, VLISCO and the other top-end brands in Ghana could look at, because especially when their items are bought, and they're not used as extensively as, you know, almost like casual everyday wears, they could be brought in, and for instance, the person becomes a customer for life and they get credit discounts or something for the next purchase or for the next fabric they buy. So yeah, I just, you know, thank you, Jacqueline. So and now before we move on to Pierre, quickly, there are some students on here, right? And I realized that, you know, I don't want the conversation to go over our heads, right? And so you've broken what secular design models can look like, what secular design is. But let's say I'm a young fashion designer. I've just been to fashion school. I'm coming into the fashion industry, the growing fashion industry in Ghana. How can I think about, I mean, so you mentioned material intelligence, for instance, so being conscious of what fabrics I use. And Jacqueline also just mentioned the cradle to great cradle sort of thinking, where you're designing in a way that it can probably be disassembled and used for something else. But yes, so I'm just based, I just want to give, can you give a quick recap of what like a young designer can think about in creating their business model, your fashion business model, so that if they don't have the, you know, yeah, basically just a breakdown so that it's very relatable and we can get it.
I think first of all, you look within your, should I say, your immediate environment. Okay, what is easy to get, and what are the resources available? What are your strengths, first of all? Because as I said, when we talk about fashion design, a lot of people just look at that is like, for my pedestrian view, a lot of people look at okay, so I'm going to make clothes, and that is all we are calling fashion design. And for a very long time, being a shoemaker wasn't even sexy in Ghana, you know. So you look at your strength, and you went to fashion school. I don't know what did you learn in fashion school, and what do you want to use it for? But then, what makes, or I think one of the easiest factors for sustainability is the ready availability of your materials and tools, what you're going to use to create your product. So I think that's like the first option, the first factor I will say. And what you are comfortable with, and also applying these principles especially if you find yourself like just one block in this island where everybody is doing things the regular way. It might not be the most encouraging, but it is learning more, as I said, researching more. Okay, so if your question is about what somebody needs to go into circular design, I think it is about making sure you can sustain whatever it is that you are doing, and identifying the resources or the talents you can collaborate with. I think these are the factors I will say. If I haven't answered your question, you can ask it again.
No, I think you've touched it. I just want to quickly add to that. So for instance, at school, one of the things that our head, which is Joyce Abibio, mentioned, which brought our attention to, was that, so for instance, it doesn't necessarily have to, so let's say I make a garment. I just want to put, so let's say I make a garment. It doesn't necessarily have to be recycled as a garment. It could turn into a bag, it could turn into like, pillow stuffings. And then the pillow stuffings could later turn into stuffings for a toy. And then the toy stuffings could later turn into maybe something for a rug, But then I suppose it would have, the designer would then have to create a conscious model where there's a relationship with the customer in some shape or form, or with their customers in some shape or form, so the items can either they can come back to them or they can be sent over to other manufacturers. And and who can then use these things in different ways. And so I think, like what you were saying, it has to be a conscious decision as a designer to create your product in such a way that it can be reused and reinvented over and over and over again until finally it's a product that doesn't have to be discarded. So that's exciting. Piero, I just want to say so aside being on YouTube Live, we're on Twitter as well. We want to say that if so we have, because the landscape isn't too clear for us, we put out a list of certain brands that we thought or that we know are sustainable, but we're sure there are countless ones out there. And so if you're listening to us, you just join into a conversation. If you know any sustainable brand, any brand that you think is doing something exciting, you can tag them or mention them to us, and we will compile some sort of a list and share it, because we want to support brands like that. I honestly didn't know VLISCO was doing all of these things, to make sure that the operations were sustainable and create an impact. And so, that's something I can say now. So we want to have like a comprehensive list, so that I think that being a sustainable brand is something that we should all aim for, right? It's just good business. Let me just put it like that. I think it's just good business. It's not just considering your bottom line, but it's also considering the impact you are having, not just to your workers, but also to the environment as well. So we'd want to see brands like that, encourage other brands, just to inspire other people to look at their business models and figure out how they can tailor them to be sustainable. Piero, we're ready for you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And yes, I agree with what you all just said. And I think being sustainable for a brand today, it's actually a necessity. We need that. We need to be sustainable. I don't think you can decide anymore if you can be sustainable or not. You have to be. I think it's a necessity. We need that, but also not just in fashion, in any sector. So I'm gonna show you a little bit of my work. I'm gonna explain what I'm doing, and also I believe, I was listening what Naz said. She showed the last slide about the key elements, and I completely agree with what she said. Sustainability is about innovation, then is about education. So you need to educate people to be sustainable and finding new ways, new systems. I think especially systems, we really need new systems to be sustainable in fashion. So I'm going to show you again my work. I'm going to share my screen with you. And well, basically in the last couple of years, I've been interested. I mean, I've been fascinated. I've always been fascinated by science and technology. And in the last couple of years, I decided to implement that into my designs and to create innovation, but as well sustainability. So, for example, I'm working with the idea of growing garments out of living organisms. For example, in one of my projects, Grow Your Own Couture, I'm looking at lichens, because lichens, they absorb pollution. They can absorb pollutants like nitrogen and sulfur dioxide, and they metabolize them into non-dangerous compounds. So they come in a big variety of shapes and colors depending on where you live. Like in cities like London, for example, it's more likely that you will find lichens like those ones that you see on a screen. They're crustose lichens, and they can grow a little bit everywhere, on wood, stones, even metal. But if you go in places like Scotland, for example, where the air is cleaner, is purer, it's more likely that you'll find lichens like these ones. So the idea is to grow garments out of lichens to purify the air around the wearer. And we could do that through a DIY fashion kit, so that you could do that at home as well. For example, you will receive your own garment, which you will receive the structure, the base of your garment, which the lichens will grow on. You will prepare a solution bath with dry lichens, nutrients. You will dip your garment on it, and then you will have to remember to keep it moist, to look after your garment until it's ready to wear. So this is one of the projects. And then there is another one, which is called Wetware Couture, which I'm working with another living organism called Physarum polycephalum. It's a genus of slime mold. It's a unicellular living organism. And it has analogies with neurons in a way that create its own network and communicate through it. But you can also control the behavior of this living organism through food sources and also chemical compounds. You can control with natural molecules, the same molecules that are used to create perfumes, for example. So in this slide, you can see I created a pattern, a flower pattern, and I screen printed that pattern on a substrate with a solution of agar, and I added an attractant molecule. So what happened that when you place this living organism on your substrate, it will only grow where it can find the attractant molecule. So follow those general rules. I also created a 3D printed garment, a 3D printed bodice. And as you can see, all over the bodies has holes. So I mentioned that you can control this living organism through food sources. So those holes is where you place your food source. And when you apply the living organism on it, it will spread all over, connecting each one of those food sources and creating a network that, as I mentioned before, has analogies with neurons. So I collaborated with PhD soft robotics at the Royal College of Art, Filippo Sanzeni and David Conati. And the idea was to create a garment, an intelligent garment that will be able to control a device, for example. Now, because we were working with wearables, we thought to use a prosthetic arm for someone that has lost it. Now, it sounds a bit sci-fi, but it is actually possible. And you can use the pulsation of the cell of this living organism as a control input. So you can catch this pulsation through electrodes, and this pulsation can trigger a movement in a prosthetic. So this is one of the exploration that I went through in this project, but you could also use slime mold as a conductive wire, for example. So he has quite a lot of different application. Now I'm going to show you a few more slides, and this is my current project. So I discovered that we can actually dye with the pigments produced by this living organism. We can dye natural materials such as silk, for example. So this living organism can grow quite fast. It can grow up to 1 centimeter every hour. And each single cell can expand up to a square meter. And also, you can grow indefinitely this living organism through a mother culture, a bit like a sourdough. So it means that you will never run out of it. Now, the exciting thing is that you can actually change the color of this living organism just by changing their pH. You can get different shades and different colors. You can get an orange, you can get a golden color, and you can even get green. So this is the prototype that I made for this project. And this is an entirely 100% silk shirt, so it means no synthetics. It's been dyed entirely with the pigments produced by this living organism. And also I only used, which means no petrochemicals, and also no waste of water, because I only used 1.5 liters of water to dye, of cold water, to dye this shirt. So, so although it's probably one of the simples or all of my garments or all of my pieces, I'm quite fond of it. Because it kind of shows that biotechnology could be applied to fashion for a product that could be available, for example, in few months, and not just for a far future, for example. So, so yes, I mean, I agree with everything that you all said, and I also I mean, this is a brand that I'm building, and it's a journey, really. It's a journey to understand how to create sustainability in fashion, and not just about the product, although it's really important, our product, because you need to, someone mentioned about recycling, upcycling. Yes, I agree with that. It's something that we should all do, but also we should ask questions, okay, what are we recycling? Are we recycling a plastic material? Because what's going to happen if you, or polyester? Yes, you're recycling the material, but the material will end up, you're going to delay the garment to its land life in a landfill. So yes, it's important upcycling, recycling, but what the material is made of. Because if you recycling plastic and the plastic goes back into the landfill, you keep polluting. So it is really important to understand which material you are using, and also if through the whole processes, what is involved in the process of making the material. Are you polluting? Are you releasing anything toxic for the environment when you're producing a specific product or fabric? And finally, I also agree with the idea of creating like a local, working with local skills, local communities, creating a healthy economy for the local community through, I don't know, a fashion brand, for example. So, for example, if in England we cannot produce cottons, why should we produce cottons? Let's look at other materials. Let's create new materials. Because, I mean, what I don't understand is we producing like cottons. We tend to produce cotton in just specific areas of the planet, using, exploiting all the resources available of that specific place for for you know, tons and tons of content for the whole world. So I think we should look at the whole system. We should look at fashion in a very holistic way. So not just the product, but the system as well in which you are producing and so on. Yeah. So this is my journey through my brand and through my work, really.
I think
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can hear you.
A question for Pierre. Somebody was asking about the kind of organism you're using and the pH. Like, I think the person caught the fact that you mentioned the color changes with pH. So concerned about the effects on the human body.
Well, this living organism, both living organisms that I'm working with, they are non-toxic to humans. So there is no danger whatsoever. However, my work, it's not, it's still a work in progress. Although you can see some of my outcomes, some of my final outcomes, but they're not as finals, they're not products yet. So as I mentioned before, it is still a journey to understand how the material will react, how to actually make it into a material. Because if I take, for example, slime mold, I don't know, I can compare, let's compare it to a material like silk. Silk, we know that the silk comes out from the cocoon, and we know how to spun the cocoon to make it into a silk. But for these living organisms, for example, we don't really know yet how to make it into a material yet. We are still in a stage of the cocoon, trying to figure it out, how to make it into a material. So it is also creating awareness of this new field, biodesign, and hopefully new people will engage with it and creating more knowledge, because that's the only way that you can go forward and make it into a material, creating knowledge so that other people can work on it, and we can finally get, you know, the material out there ready to be sold, let's say.
Yeah, wonderful. It's very, very, very interesting work you're doing.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, very, very interesting work. I'm glad that you clarified the last bit, because you know, the first part that you spoke about, especially for a lot of us, can seem very far-fetched, almost science fiction-y. But I think just like, you know, every industry has sort of like how do you call it, like a concept model. You know, so for instance, you have the auto industry where they come up with a concept model that sort of lays a trajectory for the company for years to come. It's good that we have some of these things, just like you're talking about. I mean, until you made the relationship between silk and cocoons, I'm sure before we figured out how to spin the cocoons into yarns, it looked almost as far-fetched as this, you know, because you're looking at just a cocoon and you're wondering, how can we make fabric out of this, right? Yeah, we figured it out. And so that's really insightful. I'm sure we'd love to engage you some more. Also, I'm excited about the low-hanging fruits that you spoke of. So for instance, the dye from the zygote, right? Yes.
The slime mold, yes, the dye from the
so
pigments produced by the slime mold, yes.
Yeah, the dye, the pigments. So is that something that it's ready to go into market? So that's something that can easily be adopted by companies and startups?
Yes, we could, although there are always like issues to be solved around that. I mean, there are no machineries that will help you to mass produce that. Although I don't really believe in mass production, but anyway, it is something that could be done in a more craft way. So I like the idea of, for example, in a way that fashion was used to be consumed before, like a boutique. I like having a relationship with the client, so that I can make the garment, or even design the garment with the client, and you know, and producing, rather than thinking, okay, I need to make thousands of pieces for the whole world. No, I think I'm not sure I agree with that. If you're talking about sustainability, but
Yeah, no, so I think what I'm speaking more of, so for instance, I am a designer in Ghana and I dye fabrics, you know, I make my own batik, etc. And I want to use some of your dye. And is this something that I can reach out to you for and say, look, I want color pigments in blue and green and whatever, and you can make them for me, and I can, is that something that's like what you showed us? Is it ready for that at the moment?
Well, right now, yes. I mean, you in a moment that I will get, for example, right now I'm using the whole body of the slime mold, but ideally I would like to extract the pigments so that we can only use the pigments rather than the whole body of this living organism. So if I will get to that point, so yes, perhaps I could sell you the pigments, and you can dye your own garments as well. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Do we have some more questions? I think some panelists have put some questions. Is Dinah online?
Yes, I am, Paul. We have some questions here on Zoom. So the first one is to Piero. It says, what is a living organism used? You mentioned that the color change with pH level. How does it interact with the human body, shifting pH levels, and how does it react with sweat? There's also a follow-up to that same question. It says, can the materials made from living organisms be cut and sewn, or must they be grown into the size and shape of the finished garment? Also, how do these organism materials affect the body in terms of allergic reactions?
Okay. In terms of allergic reaction, I mean, slime mold, it's not toxic. It's not harmful to humans. However, all of us have some allergies. So, I mean, it can be that you might be allergic to specific organism, like we could be allergic to latex, for example. However, slime mold is non-toxic to humans. Then for, because I'm trying to read as well, the pH. Regarding the pH, I mean, the idea of the pH, you change the pH, is not straight from the body, but you change the pH of the living organism. So you're not really growing, I mean, for dye with the slime, I'm not really growing this living organism on the body, but I'm growing to a side, and then I change the pH of this living organism. Changing the pH of this living organism, you can, for example, if you get a more alkaline pH, you get a certain shade. If you get more acid, you will tend to have different shades. So what happens is that once I've done all of this, I can dye the garments. And once the garment is dyed, there is no slime mold anymore. So the slime mold, it's actually dye, let's say. So you won't, even if the garment will touch your own skin, you wouldn't get any sort of reaction. So
wonderful.
Yeah, and then cut and sewn. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there was a question.
No, I think with that I have to come in because you explained that it's still a work in progress, and so this isn't something that immediately be cut and sewn.
Exactly.
And then,
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. So this conversation.
Yes, Diana, please go on.
In the questions section, there is a question about secondhand clothing. It says, what are your thoughts on, so this could be to any of the panelists, what are your thoughts on secondhand markets throughout Africa? Also, VLISCO produces higher end, higher price point items, but what are some options for maintaining sustainability if they are at a lower price point, that is to serve a larger community that can compete with the second-hand market? So I feel the question is trying to decentralize the access to quality clothing so that it reduces people's inclination to taking on secondhand clothing as options. Do we have any contributions on those?
I don't think I got the question very well.
Okay, so the question says, what are your thoughts? It's like a two-sided question. It says, what are your thoughts on second-hand markets across Africa? And the question is also sort of suggesting if VLISCO could, use price fabrics or clothes at price points that could sort of make second-hand clothing options less attractive to people. So that could go to Na and Delali.
Okay, I can talk about the VLISCO side first. The price, the final customer price of an item is not only got to do with the production cost. There's also the taxes the government slap on it that we have to pay. So part of, when I was even getting ready for this sustainability conversation, one of the points I had in mind to make was in order to make fabrics we produce more sustainable in future, we need the government to maybe give local manufacturers some tax breaks. So it's all part of it. It's all part of it. For instance, at the moment, a major competition that we have, not just VLISCO, any fabric manufacturer in Ghana, we're competing heavily with the imports coming in from Asia, which are unregulated, so they are not paying taxes. So it makes our products seem a lot more expensive because that is coming in as unregulated goods. To that end, we are working with the government, and they are going to introduce something similar to the tax stamp. This will be a tax sticker. So in theory, if that works, then even the fabrics coming in illegally would have to display that tax sticker before they can be sold, in which case they would have to be paying taxes. So the point I'm trying to make is that taxes forms a great part of price makeup. So it's not entirely down to the production company.
Okay. Yeah. Now, would you want to touch on the impacts of?
Oh, the impacts of what? A secondhand clothing?
Yeah, secondhand clothes. I don't know, but before you get, is that something that affects your brand as well, Delali? Is that something secondhand clothes for VLISCO? Is that a market area that you've looked at and realized is that competition for you as well?
No, okay, there is mainstream and there is, excuse me to say, some of us. Okay, you see what Piero is doing, for instance. There was a time when Woody wasn't mainstream. Those times when people did not like sewn clothes. I remember when when I was in university, and the president then, Kufuor, ex-president Kufuor, I have to address him properly, made this pronouncement that Friday African wear. One of my classmates goes like, "But you don't have a problem. You already wear them, okay? But they are in phases." I think that I was making a point the other time that when a trend starts, the first few people the people who come on board those trends, they are the people who face the criticisms, the ridicule, the credits, and eventually when it becomes mainstream, it becomes a very, very good thing. And then it is, should I say, overused or abused or like over propagated. Because if I am making, for instance, if I was selling the nose masks that I'm making, I would like to maybe reduce my cost of production and make more and make more and make more, and probably not be looking at the impact. I'll just be throwing them out there. And I think that's the danger of having mainstream. But then everything that Delali has also said tells us the fact that they are committed to being a responsible brand. Okay, but we don't know whether that is true for other brands. I think I'm digressing from your question. Your question, please ask your question again.
So honestly, time is fast spent, and so
okay.
we would like to wrap up. But basically, I think probably this is food for thought. Probably this is something that we'll have to. We could essentially cover it quickly on Friday. But what we just wanted to know was, I mean, the secondhand market is a large market in Africa, right? Post-COVID, I don't know, that might change a bit because I'm starting to see certain conversations going around, mainly out of fear, right? But the driving factors for people purchasing secondhand clothes are economic conditions, right? So even with what you showed, the places where fugu is made, for instance. I mean, I went to the north and it was a little disheartening. I shared this with my friends. So you have these people weaving all these beautiful fabrics, yet they themselves are in rags, right? They are literally in tattered secondhand clothes. Because I don't think they themselves can afford the clothes, the fabrics that they are weaving to make clothes out of it, which is sad, you know. So the driving factors for secondhand clothes are there. Accessibility, cost, economic, all of these things. And I suppose what we want to, the question was leading towards how can brands tackle this so that we have, because one of the things that came up during last year's discussion.
So I guess, I think I remember the point I was trying to make. So with the secondhand clothing, you realize
but you'd have to wrap up quickly for us.
Yes, people are going into the secondhand clothes because there are people who go in because of the trendy nature of them. Okay, and that is something Woodin is trying to, I have thought that Woodin was trying to make up for with their ready-to-wear clothes. So to make them look as chic and, what is the word? As cool. As, like, yes. Okay, so that is the competition, and I won't call it competition. That is how they have, in my eyes, I may be wrong, they have gone mainstream and could battle some of these things. But the issue she's talking about, taxes and cost of production, they're all parts of it because essentially these secondhand clothes are dumped here. Okay, and probably we might also have to look at the way of taking advantage of the situation and trying to create the industry has been created, but it's still a wear and dump industry. So we might have to take the conversation a step further and see what else can come out of that. Okay,
so finally, last question to wrap things up, and then we'll just give a final word. This actually goes to VLISCO. I mean, we can't deny the fact that we're struggling, we're in a terrible time right now with COVID. Brands and manufacturers have had to make certain very difficult decisions, especially with their looking at their supply chain. So for instance, I was reading about how certain brands have actually had to cancel orders with suppliers, cancel orders with, have to lay staff off, etc. Are you dealing with anything like that right now? Or you think, how are you managing situation during this period and after? Basically, how are you looking at it?
At the moment, we are shut down. Because we are a non-essential service. I mean, in times like this, fashion goes out of the window, obviously. So we closed all our shops. We closed the factory as well. So now that the lockdown has been lifted, we're using this week to put precautions in place, so that when we call everybody back next week, hopefully, there'll be health and safety precautions in place so that we limit the risk of transmission among the staff. So and when I say staff, we are thinking, remember we have shops that are public facing. So we have to think of the safety of our staff in the shops and also the safety of the customers walking into those shops. Then we have to think of the safety on the factory floor and then the offices. So we're using this week to sort all that out. So hopefully when we reopen next week, we know what we're doing and we can just start and, go forward. So right now we are shut down. I'm at home.
Okay. So that means all existing businesses, all existing relationships have also on pause.
On hold, yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, post-COVID, I mean, to a large extent, your guess is as good as mine. We'll have to play it by ear, see how things go. I mean, I'm sure it's going to affect even fashion. I don't know if any of you saw the vetting of Dr. Okoboy, the new Deputy Minister for Health. He was, the way he was wearing a matching face mask, matching bow tie, matching pocket square. And I thought, wow, COVID-19. No, seriously. So, that's a foretaste of things to come. So,
Yeah. Well, anyway, now and I had an interesting conversation around that, whether face mask should become fashionable or not, or should be a stark reminder of the times we're in. That's a conversation for another time. I'd like to extend, on behalf of the Global Shapers Accra, I'd like to extend our extreme gratitude for coming on board today's session, especially for our speakers who are to come back again today. I think we've had a much more smoother conversation. You really opened our eyes to your operations and to how to think sustainably, locally as well. Which for me, I think is super important. I mean, we know what's happening on the global scene, we can read about it, but what are the low-hanging fruits we ourselves can get into over here? And I think both you, Na, and Jacqueline have spoken extensively on it and given us lots of food for thought. This feed will still be on our YouTube page. And so in case somebody's missed it, we can share the links to them so that they can come and have a listen. And then probably we want to have this sort of running probably quarterly, maybe in a podcast form in some shape or form, just so if they have this feedback or their questions, we'll be able to address those things as we go throughout the year. So we might actually invite you guys on one-on-one to have further discussions on questions people may have or insights they may have gained based on these conversations. So once again, thank you very much. And I don't know, we're asked to wear our own African wear, so this is what I made. This is what I made. I'm excited to wear today. So thank you all very much. I think we can sign off.
Yeah, thanks for having me too.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, Piero. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.